Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the session of Azure ID capability overview and business-to-business collaboration. My name is Nikos Lelidis. I am a consultant at Microsoft for the last 10 years, working mainly on identity and security, both in the on-premise environments and in Azure environments as well. So for today, I will be going over, as I said, capabilities of Azure ID and how we can utilize them in our organization, making sure we are making the most out of those capabilities, the most out of our licensing model, and then discuss and have, of course, a demo and an overview of a business-to-business scenario. So we will be creating access packages and setting up a collaboration between two different organizations so that we can, in practice, make sure that we understand how to configure this and how to implement a zero-trust approach when we are collaborating either with a partner or a vendor of ours. So let's begin with the overview. So organizations we talk to, they are facing many challenges that are related to identity and access in their organization. Another one is that identity attacks continue to increase. So there was a 300% increase in identity attacks last year alone. Also, we have evolving regulations that you must comply to. Well, of course, depending on which type of industry you're coming from. If you're coming from financial industry, then that industry is much more regulated. So you need to make sure that you evolve and you mature your environment while still complying with those regulations. Another challenge is that demands for increased productivity and IT modernization that has been enabled by identity. In this world, your identity system in the cloud is your control plane that can connect everything. It can give you visibility to your entire digital estate, ensure that only right people have the right access to the right resources, and keep the bad players out. So Microsoft Azure ID is a universal identity platform that helps you manage and secure all your users and access to all your applications. So service reliability and availability is one of the top considerations for our customers and for us as well, and choosing an identity and access management solution. So with Azure ID being the largest enterprise cloud identity service, reliability and security of our service is, of course, a top priority. So it starts with operational excellence in the cloud. Physical security, operational security, global cloud fabric that runs on our clouds, which of course is Office 365 and Azure, right? The first side is the secure foundation of our cloud services. This is about how we operate our own cloud services. We have some of the world's best physical security with fences and barbed wires and so on to provide secured building environments, and within those buildings, secure server environments. Providing maximum availability, we design and distribute our physical data centers to be highly redundant, so that there are no single points of failure. We look for multiple levels of isolation, ways to scale, elastically scale, and fine-grained, physically separate domains to minimize risk, while also offering decorrelated backup authentication services. So we built our security solutions upon a key set of principles. And those are basically three principles that we follow. So move from assumption to explicit verification, right? So don't just assume that you trust someone. You need to verify that trust. The second one is adopt a policy-based least privilege access model, right? So least privilege. So give the required amount of access as needed, and then of course revoke that. And the last one is designing with the assumption that every element of your system or your systems can be breached. So you can do this by implementing zero trust controls and technologies across 6 foundational elements that we also see here. So the first one is identities. So identities, whether they represent people, services, IoT devices, they define the zero trust control plane. So when an identity attempts to access a resource, we need to verify that identity with strong authentication. Ensure access is compliant and typical for that identity, and that it follows least privileged access principles. Applications, so application and APIs, they provide the interface by which data is consumed. So they may be legacy on-premises, lift and shifted to the cloud workloads. It can be modern SaaS applications. Controls and technologies should be applied to discover shadow IT. Next one is the infrastructure. So infrastructure, whether on-premise servers, cloud-based VMs, containers, microservices, or whatever it is, it represents a critical threat vector. So Microsoft Azure AD provides a full-featured platform with capabilities for you to secure access for your organization, your partners, your vendors, etc. And of course, the organization that you collaborate with. So it can help you with securing adaptive access. So protect access to resources and data using strong authentication and risk-based adaptive access policies without compromising user experience. Right? The second one is seamless user experience. So provide an easy, fast sign-in experience to keep your users productive. Reduce the time managing passwords. Increasing end user productivity, as I said before, which is really more related to the user experience part. Next one is unified identity management. So manage all your identities and access to all your applications in a central location, whether they are on the cloud or on premises, to improve visibility and control. So our approach in identity and access management is really threefold. First one, secure authentication that is convenient for end users. Second one is conditional access to reach zero trust, and the identity protection, which is to safeguard those identities when they are used as part of an operating system session or application session. So the first question to ask yourself is, can I make my access protection stronger while I also making things easier for users? And this is about how people sign in, how often they have to sign in, and how we authenticate that they are who they say they are. And we find that across all of our analytics that the proper application of a username and password is not a tremendous predictor of a genuinely authenticated person. In other words, just knowing the username and password doesn't prove that I am who I say I am. And how can I improve that? How can we get to a world that's beyond passwords, beyond what we know are faulty technology for proving authentication? Yes, We've had them for many, many years. They have served their purpose, but we can do this more cleverly now. The second question is, how much control do you really have over access? So not only who is accessing what, but also can those access control policies change depending on the condition? So for example, I might be a very trustworthy employee of Microsoft today, and I might be allowed to access certain sensitive information. Tomorrow, I might be a slightly less trustworthy employee for a variety of reasons. So we'll get into in a moment. And I might not be allowed to access that same information. Can you access control policies that adapt to those changing conditions? And can you make those decisions on the fly? So this is a technique that it's being developed by many industry experts and analysts. So some analysts refer to this as adaptive security, and the identity space is the primary control point for such a capability. And then lastly, we ask, how do you protect user credentials? So this is really about, in this imperfect world where we do sometimes rely on username and password, keeping those credentials protected once they're used, so that when they're stored as part of an operating system session, for example, that they can be hijacked by an attacker and then used to access other things than the genuine legitimate user is trying to access. So passwords are the weakest link in a security chain, and they're a single point of failure without any additional verification. That's why we believe strongly that if you only do one thing to help protect yourself, it should be to turn on multi-factor authentication, which can prevent 99.9% of identity attacks. So imagine that for a few seconds, right? So just by enabling this functionality, you greatly increase your security posture in your organization. So protecting identities with conditional access. So what it is. So it's critical that only the right people with the right resources or secure devices can access your data from anywhere. And Microsoft Conditional Access, it's basically that intelligent policy engine built for this challenge. Oops, sorry, I think that I haven't switched my slide. Right, there you go. So it's robust controls that allow you to define specific conditions for how users authenticate and gain access to applications and data. So you can customize and manage automated policies and get reporting on the policies applied for each sign-in. So Microsoft Conditional Access gives you the power to enforce the core principle of zero trust. So never trust, but always verify. And the zero trust security model relies on the security policy engine to make access decisions you can enforce throughout the digital estate. Microsoft Conditional Access enables organizations to fine-tune access policies based upon contextual user, device, location, and session risk information. So that gives you better control on how users access corporate resources. So next one is securing access from a connected world. So security-focused workflows can be a burden and can result in people trying to find ways to work around our security controls. So we can attribute 23% of security events to careless actions of basically employees that either trying to do their job easier, but by doing so they are bypassing our security controls, or they're just careless. So providing employees a fast and easy sign-in experience for users, regardless of when and where and how they choose to work, will improve productivity and basically lower frustration for those users, right? And in addition, password resets represent 25% of help desk calls on average, right? So this adds unneeded load on IT and frustrates users, and enabling IT admins to offer self-service password reset has been shown to reduce the number of help desk calls by 20%. And of course, improving user experience as well. So enabling single sign-on for users, minimizing IT friction with self-service management, and making sign-ins seamless and more secure. So Azure AD single sign-on, it eliminates the multiple account passwords and the weak security issues. So with single sign-on, we have only one identity and one sign-in that is required, that is needed to connect to all those user applications. And of course, we have here some examples from the application gallery, right? From the marketplace that you can connect to your Azure tenant and start consuming. So on average, employees are saving a few hours a week when using single sign-on for application access. So that's like getting a whole day back at the end of a month, right? So if they've been struggling with multiple identities, they have to call help desk. So all this adds to the time required for employees to either try and troubleshoot themselves or figure out which identity to use, etc. So this builds up, and it builds up. It's a waste of time in terms of productivity. So providing a means for secure access is fundamental to user productivity, but you also should grant them additional identity experiences that are highly adaptable and empower users to manage their own identity where possible, taking some of the less critical and costly work away from IT so they can focus on more critical security issues. There you go. So seamless Azure AD user experiences start with passwordless authentication and ensuring users never have to touch or remember a password, and further breaking your exposure to your weakest security link. So passwordless Microsoft authentication experience includes Microsoft Authenticator, Windows Hello, and FIDO2 security keys, which are now available for several of our partners. So with that being said, and as time flies very, very quickly, let's jump into our business-to-business demo. All right, so we will start from the home page of the Microsoft Azure portal. where you are, we are signed in as a global administrator for Contoso with full administrative permissions. And Contoso has a new partnership with Fabricam and wants to provide its users with guest access to Contoso's applications and resources. So let's see how to enable this. So first we go to Azure ID and we select and view. So Azure ID business-to-business collaboration enables organizations to securely share their applications and their services with guest users from any other organization while still maintaining control over corporate data. So let's go ahead and create a new user account, a new guest user account, right? So we will select the new guest user. So you can create a new user in your organization or invite an external user to collaborate with your organization. Guest users have restricted directory permission and can only access resources you have explicitly granted to them. So to facilitate a B2B collaboration, guests can be added to administrator roles, as we'll see later, in this demo. For now, however, we'll invite a guest using the default permissions. So let's scroll down to provide the invitation details. There you go. So we'll fill in the name. And next we'll provide their email address. And now let's type the first name and last name. And the personal message that indicates the reason for this invitation. All right. So for now, we won't specify any groups or roles. Now let's invite the user, and note that the user invitations do not expire. All right. Now that we've sent the invitation, the user account is automatically added to the directory as a guest. Let's switch to the point of view of the Fabricam user. So this email message invites the user to enable Contoso's B2B collaboration. So let's scroll down and accept this invitation. So we review the permission that Contoso is requesting and then selecting accept to continue, of course. Right. So as you can see, the user now has Contoso credentials. Notice that no applications or resources have been shared with the user yet. So let's switch back to the role of the global administrator for Contoso and see how we can delegate administrator privileges to the Fabricam guest user so that she can invite others in her organization to access Contoso apps and resources. So we'll go into the identity governance part. So Azure AD Identity Governance enables basically organizations to balance the need for security and employee productivity, by ensuring that the right people have the right access at the right time. And Azure AD Privileged Identity Management is a service that enables organizations to manage, control, and monitor access to important resources. So these resources include Azure and other, of course, Microsoft online services like Office 365, Intune, etc. So let's go under Manage, select Azure AD roles, and we can also give users just-in-time privileged access to Azure resources and Azure AD. So this will allow users to complete privileged operations in Azure AD or 365 or SaaS apps while minimizing the number of people who have access to that secure information or resource. Now we'll select roles, and this will allow us to make permanent admin role assignments and make users eligible for Azure AD admin roles. And an eligible administrator can activate the role when they need it, and then their permission expire once they're done. So let's scroll down and select the guest inviter. So with the guest inviter role, you can give individual users the ability to invite guests without assigning them a global administrator or other admin role. So you can assign this role to users from your own organization or to guest accounts in your directory, such as the one that we've created for the Fabricam user. So let's go on and add the Fabricam user as a new member of the guest inviter role. All right, now that we've added the new role assignment, let's edit the settings for the guest inviter role. So to get started, we select the role settings, select edit. First, let's edit the activation settings for the role. In this case, we'll require Azure ID MFA when the user activates the role. So you can also require justification, ticket information, or approval to activate. And in this case, we'll require justification on activation. So next, let's look at assignments. So these are the assignment settings for the role. So we'll check the box to enforce MFA when the role is active for a user account and leave the other settings as they are. And we select update to make the change to the role settings. Next, we follow the prompts, basically to review the organizational relationship settings for Azure AD. And sharing in Microsoft 365 is governed at its highest level by the organization relationship settings in Azure AD. So let's change the settings so that by default, members and guests cannot invite other users to the organization. And next, let's scroll to select the target domain. We'll specify the domain for Fabricam, which is the only domain will allow guest invitations to be sent to. Now we're going to save our changes to update, and next let's see how to add users in an external Azure AD directory or domain as a connected organization. So first, we navigate to Condosa's overview page in the Azure portal and select Identity Governance again. Select Connected Organizations. So in this case, we'll add Fabricam as a connected organization so that each user can request access packages, which we'll learn about in a bit. So first, type in a name and description for the organization. Then specify the domain and type here the domain name for Fabricam. Now add the domain. Next, specify the sponsors for the connected organization. So sponsors can be utilized as approvers when users in this connected organization request access to access packages. And internal sponsors are member users in your directory. And external sponsors are guest users from the connected organization that were previously invited and are already in your directory. In this case, we'll specify an external sponsor. So let's select the dedicated administrator as the sponsor. And next, let's review and create the connected organization. Now that we've successfully added the connected organization, let's scroll down to define the terms of use. So Azure ID terms of use ensure that users see relevant disclaimers for legal or compliance requirements. So let's select new terms and follow the prompts there. So we enter a name and a display name for the terms. Select the terms of use document and select the default language for the document, which is English. And next to require guest users to view the terms of use, prior to accepting them, we set the require users to expand the terms of use. So let's switch that to 1. And next, let's specify the start date and frequency for the expiration schedule. So we'll select quarterly. And next, specify the duration required before the user reaccepts the term of use. So let's go down to view the conditional access settings. So if I select conditional access policy template to use and enforce, we'll choose the option to create a conditional access policy later. So these terms of use will appear in the ground control list when we create a conditional access policy. Now we create the terms of use. And now that the terms of use is created, next step is to create the new conditional access policy. So we will navigate into Azure ID under security. And let's create that new policy, right? So we will type in a name and follow the prompts there. Specify the users or groups. In this case, we'll apply the policy to all guests and external users. And we are going to specify cloud applications. In this case, we'll enable the policy for all cloud applications that are managed by Azure ID. And let's define now the controls. We select guest users, terms of use we defined earlier. And we enable this policy. So we turn this on to ensure it is enabled and then click on create. So as you can see, the policy was successfully created. And this policy is now active and will ensure that all guest users and external users accept the terms of use on the defined schedule. Now let's create a new catalog of resources and access packages to make available to guest users. And we'll follow the prompts, of course, again to do that. So we provide a name and a description for this catalog, and the enable toggle switch allows users to request access packages in this catalog as soon as they are created. And the enabled for external users toggle switch allows users in selected external directories to request access packages in this catalog. So we leave both switches set to yes and create the catalog. And let's view the guest users catalog. So as you can see, this catalog has no contents. So let's add some resources. So let's go and add resources here. So first, let's add a team to the catalog, right? So we'll search for Mark 8 project team that I have pre-created and add it. So next we'll add a couple of applications. So in this case, I'll add Box, Salesforce, and Twitter. There you go. And then next we'll add a SharePoint site to the catalog. So let's select the SharePoint site for the Mark 8 project team. There it is. Now we add those resources. Now that we've added those resources to the catalog, we also need to create an access package. An access package is basically a policy governed bundle of resources that users can request access to. So let's create a new access package. So let's type in a name and description. Let's add resource roles to the access package, and we'll select the team. There you go. So let's specify also the role that you want to be assigned to the resource. So we'll select members, and let's add an application to this access package. So we'll filter for applications only in the guest user catalog and select Salesforce. And now select a role for the application. So we'll scroll down to select chatter-free user. So we'll filter for SharePoint sites only in the guest user catalog and select the Mark 8 project team SharePoint site. All right, now select the role for the SharePoint site. Again, I will select Mark 8 project team members. Next, let's create a request policy for the access package. So you can create a policy to specify who can request the access package. In this case, let's create a policy for users who are not in the directory. So let's scroll down to select the connected organization. And let's click on add directories. So we'll select Fabricam, which is the connected organization we defined earlier. And you can require approval when a guest user requests this access package. So in this case, we'll require approval. And let's scroll down to add approvers. And the first approver is already set as the external sponsor we defined for Fabricam, but we can also add a fallback approver. So we'll select the local admin as the fallback. There we go. So you can also specify the number of days that an approver has to review a request for this access package. We'll require the decision to be made in 1 day. So to make the access package immediately available for users in the request policy to request, we set the enabled toggle switch to yes. And next, let's set the life cycle for the access package. So you can specify when a user's assignment to the access package expires. And in this case, we'll set the assignment to expire after 90 days. And you can also select show advanced expiration settings to specify whether guest users can extend their assignments. In this case, we won't allow extensions, so you can only specify whether you want to require access reviews for this package. So let's require access reviews. And we'll set the review frequency to annually. And scroll down to specify the remaining details. We'll set the review duration to 30 days. All right. So then we'll specify the delegated administrator as the specific reviewer. And let's follow the prompts to continue that. All right. And let's review the details and create that access package. So here, before we create it, we see all the information that we have configured. So this is done. So let's create, and package created successfully. All right, now that everything is configured in the Contoso organization, let's switch back to the dedicated administrator at Fabricam. So as the dedicated administrator, this user can invite other external users to access Contoso's resources using the new permissions. So to get started, let's sign in with the user into Azure. And next, the user will open the user identification to switch directories, right? So by default, user is signed in into the Fabricam organization. So we can easily switch to Contoso's directory there. And next, the user is required to read and accept the terms of use. So there it is, and we scroll down and we have to read it and accept. So the Contoso directory is now visible in Azure, sorry. Now let's see what type of permissions the dedicated administrator has. And first, let's go into view and the users, and this user does not have permissions to create new users or even to see existing users. So this is because Azure Privileged Identity Management enforces the principle of least privilege access, which basically provides guest users only the minimum privileges needed to do their tasks and that they are authorized to perform. So to invite other guests, let's activate the guest invitation role. So we will go under Identity Governance, and next we'll go under Azure AD roles and select My Roles. And here you can see the roles this user is eligible to activate. So we'll activate the guest inviter role, right? So to complete the role activation, additional verification is required, as we said, right? So additional security verification is required because we enabled MFA for this role earlier. So we follow the prompts basically to complete the verification. So first we'll provide a mobile phone number. Next we'll enter the test code that is sent to the user's device. So as soon as we receive this, we would verify and complete the verification. And now that the security verification is complete, let's select Done to continue back to the Azure portal. So to finish activating the role, we need to provide a reason for activation. And now let's select Activate. And there you go. So the activation is now complete. And now that the dedicated user has activated the guest inviter role, the user can grant other guest users access to Contoso's resources for a project. So let's follow the prompts to add a user. And scroll down to invite another Fabricam guest user. So we provide the email address for the guest user and the personal message. And now invite the guest user. All right, so invitation has been sent successfully. Now let's switch to the point of view of the guest user at Fabricam. Who's been invited by the designated administrator to access Contoso's resources, right? So we'll navigate to Outlook, and as the guest user, you can see the invitation to access resources at Contoso. So we will accept the invitation and review the permissions Contoso is requesting, and then select accept to continue. And next, read and accept the terms of use. So this is a requirement, and it's a result of the terms of use settings we specified earlier. And let's select yes to continue. And now that we've accepted the invitation, we are signed in to the My Apps portal for Contoso. And as the guest user, you do not have currently access to any resources. So this is because you first need to request access to an access package. So to do so, you navigate to My Access. There it is. So let's go and select the organizations to switch organizations. And let's select Contoso. And now you can see the access package that I have created. And note that the user is required to provide a business justification before submitting the request. All right. So on the request history screen that opens, the user can select View to monitor the status of the request as it is processed. So he can see that it's pending approval, right? So we have a workflow built into this process. So let's switch back to the point of view of the delegated administrator, who is designated approver and has received an approval request in Outlook. So let's select approve or deny request. And on the My Access portal, select the request that was sent and let's select approve. So again, we need to provide a reason and then select submit the approval. Now let's return to the guest user who sees that his access request was approved and follow the prompts to switch to the Contoso organization on the My Apps portal. So now Contoso's resources are now accessible by that user. So we made available Salesforce in this example. And finally, let's switch back to the point of view of the global administrator at Contoso. So global administrators can easily monitor the activities that has happened, or for the dedicated administrators and all the invited guest users and pretty much everything. So let's scroll down to the audit logs in Azure ID. And the audit logs show the actions that have been taken and who initiated them. So we have demoed the capability around two different, a B2B scenario between two different organizations, how we are able to delegate permissions to a user from our partner so that they can invite their own users and give them access to the access packages that we have created, while at the same time I audit my environment. I have ensured that additional verification will be a requirement for that B2B scenario, for that partnership that I have with the other organization. This is it. Thank you very much for your patience. I hope this has been informative to you. You can reach out to me to LinkedIn, or you can find me in the virtual lobbies after this session. Thank you very much for attending.